Let's go ahead and jump into it, everybody. Again, thank you so much for taking the time in order to join us for another webinar where we're going to discuss the strategies in order to face coronavirus. And so before jumping in, I just want to start off by saying that this webinar is going to be for everybody. So whether you're joining as a fitness studio focused on personal training or class-based model, you're a franchisee, a Y, there's going to be something in here that's going to be relevant for everybody. And so also want to give a special thank you as well to both Matt and Hans for joining us today. We really appreciate you guys taking the time in order to join us on the webinar and sharing your experiences with us today. So thank you, guys.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. And with that being said, we can give everybody an introduction to the speakers. So I have a slide here, and just to keep it easy, maybe if we do our introductions from left to right from the slide. So Matt, if you wouldn't mind kicking us off and giving the audience a little background to you and Rochester.
Sure. So I'm Matt Remick. I'm president and one of the owners of the Rochester Athletic Club. We're in Rochester, Minnesota. There are a few other Rochesters out there, but we're in Minnesota. We are a 260,000 square foot facility. A lot of that is due to the weather and where we're located, but I'm second generation owner. Our club has been around for 26 years and I've been here almost 20 of it. So that's my, awesome. I guess, my info.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Hans, you are next, sir.
Okay, my name is Hans. I am a Canadian-born world citizen, have lived and worked in 7 countries, spent a dozen years in the States, spent a long time in Germany, also worked in Italy, Hong Kong, and I've been on the club side, the supplier side, education, software side, so I've seen the industry from a 360-degree perspective. And the past 4 years I've been living in Switzerland. Kalen?
All right, perfect. And then, yeah, we're also joined today by Derek as well.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Derek. I'm the Director of Corporate Health and Wellness at Virtuagym, but previously I was working as a key account manager, so working with a lot of our partners, some of the larger chains in the US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, helping them implement strategies to grow their businesses. Today I'll be doing a bit of a backseat role, but I will be avidly going and checking out your guys' chats and questions. So you have good questions to bring up with the panelists, please feel free to do that, and I'll be sure to bring it up to them at the appropriate time.
Awesome. And then, hi everybody, my name is Kalen. I'm the head of the US market here for Virtuagym. Today I'm going to be moderating, and really it's just a glorified term for clicking through the slides and giving the floor to our awesome speakers that we have today. So a couple of housekeeping items before we get started there's a couple of different ways in order to interact within the webinar itself. So if you guys see on your toolbar, one way in order to communicate with us is going to be with the chat functionality. And so if you use the chat, what I would recommend is to change the setting within there. You have the ability to either send that to all panelists or to all panelists and attendees. And so go ahead and mark that off as for all panelists and attendees. That's just a great way in order to be able to keep this more of like a dialogue with others within here. So if you're curious what others are doing related to items that we're talking about and want to be able to put that out there, say the hellos and all that, that's the perfect place to do it. There's also another way that you're able to interact with us though, and that's through the question and answers section. So it's a little Q&A bubble. And if you click on that, what that'll do is it'll prompt a question for us on our end, and we're going to be monitoring this throughout the entire webinar. So if you have a question, ask it right in the moment, because it's possible that we can bring this question up to one of the speakers right on the spot and have that answered throughout the presentation itself. And then lastly, during the last 15-20 minutes of the time today, I saw one person did it already. They raised their hand. You also will have the ability in order to raise your hand, and what we'll use that for is if you have a question and aren't shy, happy to jump on the mic and talk it out with us, feel free and raise your hand, and we'll let everybody know when we're gonna do that. So additionally, this recording is going to be sent out afterwards to all the participants and posted on the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to have it there. No need in order to take detailed notes, as we'll make sure to share that with everybody afterwards. Awesome. So as far as today's agenda, we're going to be covering a lot of great stuff today. So what we'll do is review the business phases of COVID-19 as well as the member phases. We'll have an expert panel discussion on some of the items that might be short-term measures in order to deal with COVID in the moment versus what things are going to be the new standards. We'll also take an in-depth walkthrough through Matt Remick's reopening game plan that he put together for him and his team at Rochester Athletic Club. And then I put Q&As at the end, but as I mentioned before, feel free and ask them throughout the entire presentation as it is applicable, but we'll make sure to have a portion at the end where we'll try and get to all of the questions as we go through. All right, so let's go ahead and kick it off with the business stages of COVID-19. So for those of you who joined us in our first webinars, this slide should look really familiar. So we presented it as a model for how businesses will go into and come out of COVID-19. And so as you can see here, the phases were confusion, accept and adapt, preparing, and then ramping up. So I won't go into details on each of the phases. I think the titles of those phases in a way kind of speak for themselves. But what I wanted to do is just emphasize that we're now coming up on these later stages. So we are now going into a spot where many people are discussing whether or not we're going into a financial crisis or potentially will resurrect as a result of this. Additionally, we are seeing things as well that should be best practices during this time. So one of the things that we're seeing within here is don't wait too long in order to enter the game. So that's one thing that we emphasized in the last one, but want to bring up again as we're going from preparing into ramping or reopening. The other thing which I feel was a great point in order to bring up again is just the different emotions that we're going to be seeing from people within these phases as well, which will be emotions ranging from either unrest, which I can definitely say that I've seen a lot of in the media, but also confidence as well within reopening. So being aware of members and just the general people's feelings within that as well as you're engaging with the communities and staff as well. So reflecting on this, we originally presented this and put this slide together on March 22nd. And when we first presented it, we laid it out on this timeline, like as you see. And on that, during that time, you can see that Italy and China were very far along within the, we're farther along within the process than the States. Now, as we reflect on it, just 1.5 months later, we're at a spot now where we are going from that preparation phase into the ramping phase. A couple things that we found that were really interesting is that it's not uniform across the entire United States. Some are a little bit further along than others and are actually reopening at the moment, while others are waiting for cues from the governor on when they'll be able to reopen. And another thing that we've learned from just seeing other markets is that it is possible in order to backslip and have the breakouts re-up again and potentially even go into reclosure. So that's another thing that we're consciously looking out for. And so there's a cycle that can potentially go along from preparing to ramping, depending on if measures need to be taken to close down again. So the other thing we wanted to discuss at this point now is really take a chance in order to reflect on this model. I'm sure you guys might have seen this before. I knew the Business 101 course that I took was going to pay off one day. So if you haven't seen this before, essentially what this proposes is a model of how the population will adopt an innovative product. And so you can see here that it's broken up into 5 groups. As you go from left, innovators, those are the people who adopt the technology the fastest. And then as you go all the way to the right, the laggards are the one who adopt the innovative technology the latest. And so innovators are typically people who are more risky. They're at the cutting edge of technology. They're aware that some of the products that they adopt aren't gonna be the win mass appeal, but they're okay with that. They're willing in order to take those risks. Early adopters are in the second phase, and so these tend to be really influential people, thought leaders who kind of pave the way for the rest of the adopters within here in order to pick up the technology. So their buy-in is very important. So why am I bringing this up? The reason is because if you participated in the last webinar that we were in, we talked about how gyms and studios have been adopting video streaming. So particular to that conversation, what we saw and what we learned in that webinar is that from 2005 all the way until 2020, that was when that's how long it took for 16 to 20% of gyms, studios, and organizations in order to get to the point to where they were adopting a video streaming solution. So remember that the streaming revolution started in 2005 with YouTube, Hulu in 2007, Netflix started in 2008. In the fitness space, we started to see fitness enthusiasts and others start using some of these platforms like Yoga with Adrian on YouTube in 2012, The Body Coach in 2014. But it wasn't until 2015, 2016 that we started to see providers within the gym and studio space start offering platforms that we were able to really kind of buy in a turnkey way. So that piece is super interesting. So it took 15 years for us to get to a point where we had 20% adoption. Presented in the last webinar, that's now grown to 60%. So that piece is amazing because we literally got another 40% market adoption on video streaming across gyms and studios, and that happened only over the course of a couple months. And so the two things that I want to really emphasize there is that we did double market penetration over the course of just a couple of months and got another 40% of market awareness. And this is the timeline as well. Those are the two things that I think this graph really don't really emphasize, but I wanted to just at least point out. And so with that being said, I think one of the first things with this and kind of turning it over to the panelists as well is obviously this some of these items, I've placed it on here just relating to video streaming, but this goes beyond video streaming. It's about innovation in general. And so this could be cleaning standards. This could be product offerings that online services, et cetera, that are hitting the marketplace. And so one of the things that I'm curious, and it can be any one of these topics, but question for the panelist is, with a lot of these innovations that we've seen happening and gyms and studios getting creative during this time, do we think that these types of things like video streaming and others are going to be earned and and people will continue to stick with it? Or do you think that this line here will start potentially shift back drastically and it was short-term measures instead?
Well, I'll start. So I think a couple of things that we're going to try and do our best to communicate to our members is whether some of these changes as we start are going to be temporary or permanent. because as you say, there's going to be a mix. Cleaning measures, especially conspicuous cleaning, like is going to be a permanent measure, I would think, at least for the next couple of years. I mean, we've always done our best to keep and maintain a clean facility, as I believe, first of all, it's one of our company values, but I believe it's what members want and deserve. But I think, we've got third shift coming in and doing it after, or, it's not quite going to be as visual as the clues are going to be now that we're doing these things. We're going to be having people during shifts, using sprayers and doing some stuff that we didn't do before. Virtuagym is a great tool that has allowed us to continue in contact with our members during this time where they've been at home. Whether it's through the virtual personal training or just some of the tools in there. And I think those things are going to be permanent too. The video streaming of our group exercise classes, I think it'll be interesting because right now I think people are accepting lower quality video standards based on, filling that void, filling that need. I think long-term, we're either going to have to up our video production or hire somebody who does high quality videos and offer that as a service. Because I don't think in the long term, shooting them on our phones is going to work necessarily. So I think some of those things will happen, but short term too, I think we're going to see a boost when the fear goes down that people are going to want that person-to-person contact. So we'll see a rise in people spending time together. So those are kind of my thoughts.
Awesome. And then how about on from the European side, Hans, do you see the same trend there as well, and to some of the things that Matt was saying, or do you guys see it a little bit differently?
There's been a couple studies done, and good clubs are following the percentage of uptake, how many people are using the virtual, which is very important. You need those metrics. I think that, as I mentioned, answering in the chat, that this mass personalization is part of the solution. It's going to be important that a combination of professional, not created in the club videos are done, as well as the authentic from the instructor that I know. That mix will be important because people want to also identify with the club and with the people, the instructors they know in the club. And I think that the clubs will have won if they've made the transition to understand that they're not only serving the members when they're in the four walls of the facility, but also that people are thinking about and being served when they're also outside of the facility. And that will require not only virtual classes, but virtual coaching, nutrition consulting, all things that can also be done, people have realized in this COVID days, online.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point in there as far as making sure to engage with the members also outside of the four walls as well. And so one of the things that I feel that also insinuates automatically is that at the end of the day, many of the measures that we're taking also are going to be related to the member and the consumer wants, needs, and that as well. Based off of what you've been seeing, Matt, within your organization. So I know that you guys have taken some measures in order to be able to continue to engage with the members and staff during this time. For the way that you guys are looking at it, do you think that the members' needs have fundamentally changed and that they'll end up thinking about a digital components like video streaming and others for the long haul, or do you think that for them it's business as usual?
I think it's probably going to be, a bit of both, but I'm not trying to take a cop out either. But really, I think short term, people are going to really like the relationship, like Hans said, with the trainer they know or with the group fitness teacher that they know. That's going to be really important because right now they're all sitting at home missing their tribe. The people who do the water aerobics together and then have coffee together after, they're not getting that social interaction when they watch the virtual. One of the things that we've had success is like our kids club director goes on our Facebook and will read a book to kids. And as silly as that sounds, it's getting over 2,500 connections because parents are playing those things for their kids to keep that connection going because they miss the kids club director. We've done other things that are just not fitness related, but are more relationship related that have got a good impact. But I think as long as it's a blend of both, that's going to be helpful. Our members have learned now that probably a Zoom diet consult will be fine. It might actually save them time. They don't have to come in. It could be as effective. We're going to be able to do some of those things, but the human touch is.
Yep. Awesome. So just a quick kind of like a housekeeping item. I'm not sure if maybe it's just the sound quality on my end, but Derek and Hans, are you able to catch everything that Matt is saying when he's speaking? Or yeah, okay, it might just be the quality on my end then. Alrighty, so going on and changing slides and moving on to the next piece. Let me go ahead and just share my screen again. The other thing that we talked about, in the last webinars as well, was what are the members going to be going through during this time? How are they going to be feeling, and what's the best way in order to bring them back? So these were the phases that were outlined, but obviously now we're going into phase 3, which is returning to the gym and studio. And so when we presented this also in end of March, we said that the things that are going to be important is making sure that we're communicating to the people that it's safe to come back, so that this way they know that it is in fact okay in order to start going back, seeing that other people are within the facility, sharing those success cases of people getting a great workout within the facility as well, so that they feel enticed in order to come back and know that it's okay. And then the other thing that we talked about was dropping the difficulty a little bit for each member. So more from the trainer side of things. So they'll be out of practice. You want them to feel good. So don't push them too far during this time. Take it back, like 10% or so that this way they'll be able to leave feeling good. So with this piece kind of being presented, it's super curious to see how these hypotheses have actually been played out. Hans shared a slide which talked about opening across the world, and I'll go ahead and go to that now. All righty.
It can be a little bit hard to read because there's so many countries, so many updates. China was closed first. They reopened. They closed again. Now some are opening up again. A lot of the European countries are announcing dates to open up. Switzerland opened yesterday. One of the German states opened yesterday. Sweden was never closed. Finland closed and now reopened. So it's a mixed bag right now with a lot of different experiences. In Düsseldorf on Sunday night, at midnight going into Monday, McFit opened up, and they combined it with a lottery, a prize to the first one person of the first 1,000 that entered the McFit clubs would get a trip to the United States. And then they had 100 people waiting in line, not adhering to physical distancing, which of course was picked up by the press. We saw it on TV here. Not the kind of thing that we want to do where the politicians are giving us a chance to prove that we're responsible, but a bit of exuberance from young people wanting to work out. They missed us like we missed them. So I mentioned China a little bit, and China has been very strict in terms of wearing masks. In a lot of European countries that are opening up, masks are not required. They're recommended for staff. Where it's obligatory to take a measurement check, temperature, and even be using an app to prove that you're in the green zone. China is taking extraordinary measures right now. And all the clubs that I've seen and seen pictures of are taking the hygiene and sanitizing very seriously, as well as 1.5 or 2 meters of distance away from each other. Every second cardio machine closed, and making sure that it's a safe environment, because based on experience of the first clubs in the countries that have opened, you might be only getting 30 or 40% of the typical visitors coming in, because a lot of people are still afraid, they're hesitant, they're going to wait for what they hear, because they don't want to catch COVID-19 in the clubs, which we could understand.
Yeah, and maybe just something real quick on that, Hans. So for those who don't know, so Hans's club, like he had mentioned, had opened up yesterday. He went in basically the first day back to check it out. I'd be curious to know just kind of like your quick understanding of the situation. You know, did that particular fitness center have a wave of people trying to anxiously get back in the fitness center, or is it more so, in your experience, as you just saw, more of a bit of a relaxed approach? Hey, let's wait and see. You know, let's let the first few days pass before we make a decision to come back in. What did you see on your first day back?
I purposefully was at the club 20 minutes before it opened, and I was the first one waiting. But by the time it got to be 8 o'clock, there were 6 or 7 people also waiting to get in. There were about 10 people working out by about 8:15, 8:20. There's normally 2 to 3 times the amount of people there at that time. So that was consistent with other countries. Very noticeable, which is great to be telling the story and telling the good story. There were 5 staff there, so there was 2 members for each staff person, and each staff person wiped down the machine of the person the moment they left the machine. So that was very, very impressive, and you're not going to have that in every club. I also saw other clubs yesterday morning when I did my tour that had 15, 20 people in them, and obviously the staff can't follow every person. But what was nice, and this is particularly true in Switzerland and in Germany, people were wiping down the machines themselves as well. So that's good that people are taking the responsibility themselves, but the staff are following up as well.
And just a quick follow-up on that, Hans, do you think it was because the staff there was trying to limit the number of people entering, or you think it was more specifically the users are coming back slower? Specific question from Heidi.
The users are coming back slower. That's the first point. In one of the clubs I went to, there was a sign right at the entrance, maximum capacity 57 people. And they have counting apps and ways to make sure that if that number is reached, there will be a waiting area. And there are some clubs that are going to be having people sign up in advance to make sure that they have a place. And if you don't sign up in advance, in smaller facilities or in clubs that have got high volumes of people, we might see lines of people if capacity is reached. So it's changing people's behavior. Scandinavia, it's normal to sign up online in advance for a group exercise spot. Many other countries don't have that, but that's going to happen because there's less spots that will be allowed in the group exercise classes than before. And that's all I have to say about that.
All right, let me go ahead and share, reopen your slides again then, Hans. So you guys should see that back up again.
So I just mentioned the reduced capacity in the group exercise classes. And people are going to need a little bit more time to get themselves oriented. The locker rooms are generally closed. Some are allowing people to put their valuables in the lockers. Generally no showers, no wet area use at the current time. As Kalen said before, people will not be in as good a shape as when they were last in the clubs. So I think that people are going to need a little bit of pampering, a little bit of help at the beginning. Do I have the right intensity levels? People going around, are you okay? Do you have any questions? Maybe offering fitness assessments. And I think that personal training will increase because of this, because people are going to need more help getting back in. But on the other hand, there's a higher understanding and appreciation of the value of being healthy, and health is wealth. Health will be an important part, improving your immune system in order not to get the symptoms. There's a lot of reasons now that people are getting that they have to be more conscious of their health. And I think that clubs will benefit from it, but personal trainers will also benefit from it.
Yeah, I agree with Hans in that one-on-one training will grow because group fitness training has been, growing in popularity for the last several years. But now to do it safely in the post-COVID time, sharing equipment is going to become an issue. Therefore, the expense of running a group fitness or a small group fitness for a facility goes up depending on the types of equipment used. If you're using some of those, training treadmills and whatever, having one of those per participant starts to become a barrier. But one-on-one with a trainer being cognizant and making sure the equipment is clean before and after, I think will show added value.
There are also small lockers that might be making their way into the clubs just to handle the valuables. I think people's trousers, shirts, they don't necessarily need to be locked up. That needs to be communicated with members, because generally when lockers are being used in the clubs that are open in Europe, they're saying every second locker will not be able to be used in order to have the spacing. So with less lockers, I think that there will be less people that will be actually able to lock up their things. So there needs to be a thought given and shared about the storage of valuables in this phase.
Yeah, one question that came through, Hans, is for the clubs that you visited. This one's related to the limited capacity and the revenue stream related to it. So, did you with the clubs that you've seen, do you think that the revenue will support the club actually being physically open during this time?
I don't think that that will be the case. There will be a transition period where there will be potentially the same amount of expenses or more because of the actions that are needed to be done. Disinfectants. I heard yesterday on another webinar that clubs are looking at a 5-figure increase in expenses for things like disinfectants because they always need to be there. They need to be full. And because of that, and the fact that, as is said on the slide, the first 1 to 3 weeks, there's not going to be necessarily new people looking to join the clubs. It will happen once there's more confidence happening. So I think from a cash flow standpoint, it's going to be an additional period of maybe 3 weeks, maybe as much as 2 months, where there will be higher expenses and lower revenue than previously were the case, which makes liquidity very important.
Alrighty. So before I move on, Derek, I've only saw the questions that came through in the actual Q&A section. Are there any questions that came through chat before we go on to the next part of the presentation?
Yeah, I mean, Matt already elaborated on it. He actually responded directly, but I'm not sure if Matt, you wanted to elaborate on kind of your pricing and dues considerations for the reopening.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. Yes, somebody had asked, with capacity caps, what are the thoughts on membership pricing in the short term? Members may have to sign up for specific time slots equipment. So that is exactly how we're opening. We're going to have time slots where we have limited access to parts of the club, and you're going to have to pick where you want to go. But we are charging full dues, and some members will be comfortable with what we're able to offer and what they're going to be paying to have access to it. And then some aren't. So we're going to be very flexible on our ability to freeze. And as people are comfortable with the model we're able to offer, as they come on, we will just bill them at full dues. I struggle with dropping our dues pricing because I have a feeling that people will wonder, well, why were you charging that other number in the first place? Because as expenses and overhead has not gone down. So that's why we're choosing what we're choosing, but we're going to give people grace because everybody's going to have a different comfort level. And they're comfortable to come back, and that's understandable. We all have different variables at home and different things we need to worry about, but we're trying to operate with as much grace as we can, but we're going to charge for it.
There was a shitstorm on Instagram I heard about yesterday when Equinox announced to their members the new policies and the fact that they were not going to reduce their prices, even though the wet areas, the saunas and swimming pools were not going to be open. So, if you're charging $175 or $250 a month and you're dropping the available services by 30 or 40%, even though those people that are at Equinox, they might be well off, able to afford it, they were like saying, hey, you're not giving me what I had expected. I expect a lower price. So that was a bit of a surprise for me, but it just shows that all people are conscious of money these days. The worst thing I think that can happen is if we start getting into a price war. In these days, maybe we need to be thinking of not losing versus can we get more money? Because it's not the people's fault that the government says maximum 5 or 9 people in a group exercise class. It'll be hard at the beginning to charge extra for that.
All righty. So, yeah, the next part of the presentation that we're going to be jumping into now, it's going to be on the reopening plans that Matt and Rochester are planning through phase 1. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and then it should jump up again.
Perfect. So yeah, we chose to go with what the White House has delivered as their 3-phase plan. It's right now where we're at. We haven't been receiving a whole bunch of direction on what to do. So we felt like our members might be familiar with the colors. So we're going to be using red in phase 1, blue in phase 2, and white is phase 3, but there aren't any limitations according to what we received from the White House. So really, this is not set in stone. This is our best guess for where we're going to be allowed to operate, as we still have a stay-at-home order through the end of the 17th. We don't know whether we'll be allowed to open on the 18th, but yeah, this is our best guess at the moment. So if you go to the next slide, please. So really, I have to tip my hat to the general manager, assistant general manager, and my team because they're the ones who've been doing a lot of this. They do the day-to-day operations, but things we've been offering to our members during this time are virtual group fitness classes, personal trainers. I mentioned story time. Recipes from our dietitians have been huge. So other people have done that. If you go to the next slide, we want our staff and members to know that we aren't making these decisions on our own. We are using the network of influence that we have. And we are using URSA I'm in a roundtable, the GM is in a roundtable. We're using our local Chamber of Commerce and just the club industry as a total. Because there's a lot of good ideas out there, and we're certainly not going to come up with all of them on our own. If you go to the next slide, we were trying to put ourselves in the footprints of our members. So what will they walk through? How will they walk through? What will they see? So these are some of the questions. And again, I believe these slides will be shared. I don't need to read them all to you, but we just wanted to really make sure we understood from a member's perspective what the club will be like, because it will be different. So we created teams. If you go to the next slide, we broke it up into teams of member communication. And this is all different parts of our management team. Somebody was going to focus on room capacity, make sure signage is there, moving our furniture around, because with the new social distancing standards, and we are basing ours off of 5 people per 1,000 square feet is what we're thinking that we're going to be told. So that's 200 square feet per person. But we have somebody looking at all our supplies and inventory, how members are going to come in and really experience their first time walking through the club. We are most likely going to be developing a video too to send to our members and give them a walkthrough of what they'll be experiencing, to hopefully downplay some of the fear that will be there, because people are walking into a different experience. So those are some of the planning groups we had. And we're sharing this information with our team. We have a series of 4 meetings on Zoom, sharing with our team over the next few days. And then really when we open up, we want to make sure we're bringing in our employees for the first day to 3 days, depending on when we're allowed to open and what's going on, to make sure that with the stay-at-home order, we haven't been able to just show them what their new processes are going to be like, so that we're in the best shape to put our best foot forward when our members open. So we're not just going to open and wing it. We want to make sure we're aligned and doing things together as a team. So we kind of get into some of the planning in the next slide. We've designated somebody our cleaning and sanitizing point person. One of the things I've heard is pretty key is start using sanitizing and disinfecting instead of the word just cleaning. It resonates better with members. So we had our Olivier meet with every single director to go through their area. So we marked, we have checklists for, light switches that need to get wiped down and different things, just so that we start to really dot our I's and cross our T's. So if you go to the next slide, it'll show kind of our plan. So members are going to have to make a reservation. We are planning to have several 2-hour periods during the day. So members will have access for 90 minutes, and then we will have 30 minutes of cleaning and sanitizing in between. So basically, we're going to be using the app, which is Virtuagym, and we have different areas that they'll be able to sign up. So they'll sign up for fitness, or they'll sign up for tennis, or they'll sign up for Group X. And we were able to put caps on all of those. And then if there's a waiting list and somebody drops out, they'll get notified. But will be having members stick to what we believe are going to be the restrictions we have on our space. So people can use their mobile device, which is the easiest. They can use the desktop access to Virtuagym, or for those of our members who don't necessarily have technology or aren't friendly, they'll be able to call and we will put them in the app. So when they come into the club, if you go to the next slide, we're going to have 2. We're going to be having them. Active is physical therapy. It's a different door than our main entrance door. We're going to have 1 indoor and 1 outdoor, so we don't really cross a lot of traffic. But they'll come in there and queue up. And the people who have it on their mobile app can simply show the app, and that time period will have a green check mark from Virtuagym, showing that they're signed up for that time in that location. They can check in and go. The people who use the web online or called in, we have to verify that they're in the right time, place, and making sure that they're in the designated area or they've got a reservation, just so that we're following for our member and for our staff safety, the guidelines that have been given to us. So the quicker line will be people with the app. The other one we will do it. And I feel like over time, members will certainly drift towards the app, and that line will go quicker and we'll get more engagement with our app. So that's a plus. So if you go through the next slide, you'll start to see some of our capacities. Like I said, 200 square feet per person. And we are, like I said, a 260,000 square foot club. So we went through and we did our fitness floor, which for us includes cardio, free weights, track, lower free weight, and an adult cardio room. It's about 22,000 square feet. Our capacity for that 2-hour or 90-minute window is 88 people. Normally we get over 2,000 people a day in our clubs. And this should give us the capacity for over half of that with these 2-hour windows. We really don't know how many people are going to visit. From what I've heard in my roundtables, the people who are opening the multi-purpose facilities are getting somewhere in that 30 to 50% of visits the first week or two that they would normally get. And the high volume, low price are getting about 70% of their normal traffic. So those are some of the numbers. But we've gone through neighborhoods of family entertainment center. It's essentially an indoor park. But we've gone through and we have defined number of heads that can be in each area. Kids Club is our nursery. So if you go to the next slide, there's more information, or there's a couple of photos actually next. Yep. One of the things we did, if you look, most of you probably, if not all of you, haven't been to our club, but we spaced out all the selectorized equipment. There's 6 feet in between it. Those are the items on the right side. All our cardio is networked. So we've got, the cable runs. So we're doing every other piece of equipment, again, using that red signage to identify it as a phase 1 change. And what's nice about using the signs rather than moving everything around, if this goes a couple of weeks, we can rotate those versus on the machines to balance out the wear. So that's one of the reasons we're doing that way. So we're also thinking we can start with some group exercise. So we'll show a little bit of what we're doing there. We have several studios at the club. If you go to the next slide, it has the capacity for our different studios. Our largest one is about 3,000 square feet, and that's the lower studio. And we have room for 16. Our upper studio will hold 10. So how are we going to signal that for members? And again, they're going to sign in. So luckily for us, most of our studios have 2 doors. If you go to the next slide, we will have one door that's an entrance only and one door that's an exit only. But our signage team has been putting the capacity literally right on the parts of the club that they apply to, so our members know. And we're trying to put reminders in that member journey. If you look by the iPad for Fitness on Demand, please sanitize your hands before and after using the iPad. That is not a normal thing pre-COVID. It is a normal thing now as a result of this. So we're trying to let people know and just trying to hopefully let them understand we're trying to think of their whole process. So we are designating different spots within the studio you'll see for social distancing, please stand here. So we have everybody having that 6 feet around them, and that's where our capacities will get marked. We're at this point too thinking we'll be able to open our pools. If you go to the next slide, we're just allowing 1 person per lap lane. In our lap pool, we have 5 lanes. Our family pool, using that 200 square feet rule, has a capacity of 6. Our outdoor pool, because we're in Minnesota, we don't open until Memorial Day here in the US. We still don't have any direction whether or not we will be able to open an outdoor pool. So that's why there's a question mark there. Right now, some of the cities in the state have said they're not necessarily going to do it. Lifeguarding and lifeguard training is an issue right now because people cannot get within those social distancing standards to train lifeguards. So that's one of the areas we're still waiting for a little direction on. We have our locker room capacities. We are not allowing people to shower necessarily when they start, but we're trying to figure out the balance between allowing people to rinse off to go swim. So we may mark 1 or 2 showers for swimming only, but we really don't want people to shower in the facility after, at least during phase 1. So if you go to the next slide, we talk a little bit about what we're going to communicate to our members. We're going to ask that they plan to come in and go out and not use the locker rooms if they can. We will have some lockers available so that people can lock up valuables, but we're going to encourage them to leave them in their cars if they can, especially in their trunks, and maybe they'll have keys that they want to lock up or something. But we'll have the restrooms available. Showers will be unavailable. We are not having any of the community products of lotion, mouthwash, razors, combs. You know, normally we have baskets of those things, so somebody will grab a razor. That's something we're not comfortable offering in phase 1. So that's at least how we're going to handle the locker rooms. And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see we've designated which lockers people can use. The ones with the red on them are the ones they can use. And we happen to have a Gantner system where our lockers are all RFID and networked. So we can turn off all the other lockers. If you don't have that, you can sure lock all the other lockers and just leave the ones open. But this has the 6 feet in between. And the other part is we know which lockers to go in and sanitize during that half hour. If we just allowed members to do that, we would have to maybe, you know, with ours, we can run a report, but this just makes it more efficient for us to go in and sanitize. So other items that are part of our everyday club experience that we aren't offering are, we have morning coffee available before our deli typically opens. That's not something we're offering. Basketball is going to be really difficult. We aren't going to allow pickup basketball, but people will be able to reserve a basket and we will give them a ball and then we'll sanitize the ball when it comes back. We're not allowing racquetball, squash, badminton, massage, just because those, all of them inherently have social distancing issues. And then birthday parties and special events we're putting on hold. Phase 1 we feel could last anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. We don't really know, but as things get loosened up, we'll have another presentation that we'll be sharing that's going to be blue, and we'll address the new things that we're able to add and reinforce the restrictions. But basically, if you go to the next page, our summary is, oh, I missed that slide, sorry, but we're going to be requiring masks for all our associates. We are buying a rewashable logoed mask so that it looks a little less medical when people come in. We have already installed sneeze shields or plexiglass shields in any of the areas where there's a lot of member to employee contact. Some of our larger rooms that we use for meetings and different things, we're using as a break room because our break room area has a capacity of 1. So if we can use some of our civic view room or our deli dining area, we can have 7 employees on break at the same time. We're allowing our employees to come in through the main entrance so they don't have to necessarily walk past all the members who are queuing up for the next period. We're going to have a special place where they sign in, they fill out whether they have symptoms or not, and then they'll clock in, where you're going to ask all our members and all our associates to clean hands when they come in the building and wash hands when they leave as well. So that is what we're going to do. And then we just kind of have a summary where we'll have reservations required if you go to the next slide. Capacity limits, we have some activities that are unavailable at the start. Our membership options, we're going to be, as like I said, as graceful as we can. We are not going to be selling guest pass during this time. So we're only going to be offering this space to members who have been, you know, with us through this time. We have to make sure we define what our staff responsibilities are. In our states, we're requiring a COVID-19 preparedness plan. And the team here at the club has put together a 26-page document that has all the cleaning details, and I'm really proud of the work that my team has done. I'm pretty blessed with the people who work here. So that is the majority of our opening plan, and these will be shared with the rest of the slides, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on that.
Well, speaking of questions then, Matt, without further ado,
Sure.
a common theme that I saw in a bit of the chat is they were wondering, I think just, you know, generically, but if we talk about your phase 1 specifically, a lot of people are concerned about like the at-risk populations. I think they're concerned because they think they might be difficult to attract back and create kind of an environment conducive for them. So like an example is like the supermarkets might have an hour specifically set aside for the elderly or those who are pregnant, etc. So they were wondering if you've done anything specifically related to kind of the at-risk group, anything kind of special.
So we've talked back and forth about that a little bit. And one of the things that I think is key that you'll need to communicate, and we're going to communicate to our staff and our members, is we don't have all the answers. We're going to open with our best guess and reserve the right to change as needed. So we are not opening with a special population time, because we really don't know when our slow time is going to be with the reservation system. If there's a time that, you know, after a few days, we find that the majority of people aren't signing up, we may do that. But I think it's hard to say that 7 a.m. where a lot of people are doing that for that in our market area, that's going to be a time where people who are getting ready to go to work are going to be doing those types of things. But I see a question coming through. We aren't specifying which equipment people are signing up for. We're specifying that area, and we just feel like people are going to want to do a little bit of weights, do a little bit of cardio. Originally, we had thought about maybe separating the cardio from the free weight area, from the whatever, and we just decided to allow it all open, because somebody can come in within 90 minutes and should be able to get in a complete workout. Some of the information I've heard from my roundtable and other clubs that have opened is there's a huge demand at the start on your free weight area and your selectorized in your weight area. Being that people have been able to do some of their cardiovascular at home, they're struggling with replacing the weight and strength training at home. So that's going to be something we're going to watch, but that's one of the reasons why we made sure we spread out all our equipment to make sure that it's all accessible. So that's some of the information I've heard from people I know who have opened.
Sorry, 1 second, Hans. I'm going to take you off. You're on mute at the moment.
I would concur with what Matt said based on what I saw in the 7 clubs. The strength training equipment was used a lot. And so, yeah, that is understandable. There's only so many one leg squats or one arm push-ups you can do. You want to have some resistance, some real resistance.
Yeah, another question we had in the Q&A, I know, Hans, you answered this kind of specifically in the chat, but some are questioning whether or not they should be doing some kind of signing, some kind of waiver form for COVID. Is that something that maybe in Hans, your experience, you have seen, or Matt, you have experienced or discussed with the team?
So Brent is the general manager of our club, and he's answered one of the questions in there that, you know, as members queue up, we are going to be, you know, communicating to our members what their obligation in this is going to be, which is social distancing, cleaning up before and after, if they are sick, not coming in, those types of things. We aren't setting up a specified waiver necessarily for all our existing members. We may add it to our digital offering or digital contract for our new members, but we're not selling memberships right away. We're going to give that a little bit of a break, as we really feel like, you know, the people who have kind of been through this with us should get the first crack at it. And then I also see, should we take temps of members? We're choosing not to do that, again, self-policing, but biggest reason is nobody else in our area is doing that. Our grocery stores aren't doing that. Some of the other big box stores. So we don't want to start necessarily making the experience different than what our members see at other places.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if Hans, if you wanted, or Hans, you wanted to jump up on that. I see that you also gave your opinion on the waiver, but also would be curious to know kind of what you've seen also, as I had mentioned, being in Europe, being already back into the gym, if you've seen any of these. There you go.
A temperature measurement gun costs maybe about $35, $40. I would recommend to have one in case the situation changes. I would agree with Matt. maybe not in the first phase, but be prepared in case things get worse, or if there's any pressure, or if there's a trend coming, that you're ready for it.
Yeah, I agree. We have one ready to go should it be needed.
Somebody says, oh, I'm not feeling so well. Let's check it. But more as an exception than a rule.
Yep.
So Caitlin, how are we on time? I do see a couple more questions coming in, not necessarily on the specific topic, but potentially good for the final Q&A.
Yeah, so at this point now, during the we're in the last 15, 20-minute stretch here. So this is that moment where, you know, if anybody would like to raise your hand, we can also unmute you so that this way you can ask a question to the panelists. And so anybody who's willing to do that, I saw a couple hands go up earlier, seeing a couple come up right now as well. So what we can do is unmute you guys so this we can answer your questions as well as answer some of the ones that have come in that we weren't able to address throughout the presentation.
Right then. So Kalen, I already see that Malik has raised the hand. So Malik was also, you answered some of their questions throughout Matt and Hans, but Malik also has another question. So I will be allowing you to talk now, Malik. So you should be able to speak now if you unmute yourself.
Yes, can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you all for doing this. I have a question. Could you all talk more about the virtual elements of fitness when gyms are reopened, specifically like streaming and, you know, online classes, like how that will begin to take shape as you all reopen?
So we're going to continue to offer them certainly during phase one, most likely phase two. And my guess is really we're going to have some virtual class outside of the club offered with our staff, probably through the remainder of 2020. We hope that our virtual training using the Virtuagym app takes off and is around forever. I would love for our trainers to be able to use that and sell to members who leave our area, as long as they maintain that connection. It's a great tool. It allows people to track reps. The one thing I really love about it, it's got an avatar that shows the exercise. So when I've met with a trainer and they hand me a book and we go through 17 exercises, my ability to remember how to do them all isn't very great. So having that avatar has been good. So I think, you know, the virtual personal training, I think will be around for a long time. Unless we're good at producing our own videos, we probably eventually have a service that we can sell as part of our membership. But we want that connection to stay through the rest of this year for sure, at least at this point.
Yeah, and one of the other panelists in our previous webinar said that for videos, live video streaming through Zoom during the reopening phase, what they'll do is a hybrid. So they'll be streaming their live classes with real members who are participating within it as well. One as just to be able to address the capacity issue. Two is the safety of members who maybe don't feel comfortable being able to come in just yet. And then the third piece was really hitting that social proof piece as well, so that this way members can see that, yes, others are going back, and we also now potentially can consider going back as well.
If I could add something here, staff training is going to be important. The staff is going to be under a lot of pressure, but the ability to show compassion, to understand the frustrations. A lot of people have had a hard time working from home with kids if there's no childcare available. So emotional intelligence is going to be important. Something that hasn't been mentioned, which I think is so important, is humor. If you can get people to laugh, it will sort of make it easier for people to just breathe and relax. There's a lot of pent-up frustration, there's aggression, and we can do our part, and I think that some of the staff are going to become great entertainers, maybe a second career, by getting in front of the camera, by being the entertainers that maybe we need to help people forget about the travails, the problems, the stress that they have in their lives through COVID-19.
and maybe just a kind of a plug at the end of that, Hans, for those who aren't aware, next week's webinar is going to be very much focused on the staff. So we know, as Hans is saying, this has been a very stressful experience for them. We know that in these previous conversations, we've been talking specifically about members, etc. But a big focus of the next webinar will be focusing on making sure that we're trying to help out the stress levels of our staff, making sure we're providing a healthy experience for them, one that's easy for them to come back and adjust to. So that's also, like I said, a good segue, because that's what we'll be talking on next week. A lot of the questions I'm seeing come in now, just for Matt and Hans, I see some of you are actually responding to them as well. Kalen, feel free to jump in as well if you have anything. Is that they're talking more so from like a consultative perspective, and maybe more so like an outlooking perspective. So obviously Hans with the fitness center open back up, and then Matt with you very clearly identifying your phase 1 stages already. Are you concerned at all about maybe the potential timeline? So Matt, for you, are you concerned that this phase 1 could last potentially a lot longer that you had anticipated? And then I guess Hans, for you, based off of what you have been seeing, does it seem like the action plans that are being rolled out are actually going to be implemented?
Up till now, I'll start, Matt. The clubs have taken the precautions seriously, and they're really being conscientious in doing so. There is a great concern about a potential second wave. And if the second wave comes, we will have to be rethinking a lot of what we're doing. I heard in a previous webinar that people should have worst case scenarios in the back of their minds, in their drawers, because if there's a second closure, we still want to serve our members. But I think we've had a test run now the last couple months of how virtual can fill some of that gap. Although most clubs have done virtual classes, and not a lot have made the transition to offering small group personal training, one-to-one training, Zoom training, with other things other than a group exercise environment. So I think that we could see this lasting a year, maybe 2 years, especially if there is a second wave. So the worst might not have hit us yet. And we need to be prepared for that if that happens. Matt?
Yeah, I was actually going to bring up my worst fear is the second wave as well. But if we're responsible, and I believe good faith effort is what everybody has to do, is put your best foot forward and do the best job you can. And hopefully our members, and from what I've heard, it's been encouraging. The members who have been able to go in and do these things are way more cognizant about cleaning, are cognizant about social distancing. I think people in general do not want to see this continue any longer than it has. But it's not all up to just us. But if we do our best good faith effort, we stand a better chance, is really how I feel. And one of the better pieces of advice I've heard in the last weeks of webinars, I've been in several, but last week somebody had said, when the question came up of how do you back staff or how do you train staff, because members are going to probably be on edge because of being at home and those things. But she said she had walked up to a member who was giving some of her staff a hard time, and she just used the phrase of, "This is a hard time for all of us. Could you just help us by doing this?" And I thought it was a great phrase, inclusive with the us, and it's a hard time. Most people aren't going to argue with that. So we're going to try and train our staff to lead with that when things are getting a little bit difficult. If this is a hard time for all of us, would you please help us out, and then go into whatever that detail is.
Let me follow up with that and say, to save the overall membership, if someone refuses that reasonable request, maybe it's necessary for the staff in the politest way to suggest that there might be a better place for that person to be working out. Because if you allow someone to break those rules, it will have a negative impact on the other members who are expecting the staff to make sure that the other members adhere to the rules. Difficult job, but an important one.
Mhm. All righty, so we have about 3 minutes left. So if there's any final answers, or sorry, questions that come through, we can go ahead and get that. While we wait for that one to come through, I just want to say thank you guys again, Matt and Hans, for taking the opportunity in order to meet with us today. It really was really valuable in order to be able to hear your perspective, see the plan that you guys are working as well within the organization. And thanks for taking the time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalen, for helping organize, moderate. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Matt. Great input from your side. I appreciate it.